Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. I didn't expect the room to feel this warm, not when the ice in my hand was trailing cool, shivering paths down my collarbone. I stood in front of the mirror, focusing on the way each drop slid over my skin, the way the cold made my breath catch just a little. It was supposed to be a moment of calm, a moment just for me. But the door clicked. Soft. Unannounced. And when I looked up, he was standing there. He didn't say a single word. He didn't even move. He just froze in the doorway, eyes locked on every slow motion I made, like each delicate circle of ice against my skin pulled him deeper into a trance he couldn't step out of. His gaze wasn't inappropriate, it was captivated. Curious. Almost reverent, like he'd walked in on something he wasn't meant to see but couldn't convince himself to look away from. My heartbeat stuttered. Not from embarrassment, but from the way his eyes met mine through the mirror. There was a sudden silence, thick and charged enough that I felt it settle between us. The kind of silence that feels like a touch, brushing over your shoulders, tracing the line of your spine, daring you to move. I did. Barely. Just a slight shift of my fingers as I dragged the melting ice lower across my sternum, slow, teasing, unintentional yet somehow meant for him. His breath hitched. I saw it. I felt it. And the room suddenly felt smaller, warmer, like the air itself leaned in to witness what neither of us was saying. For a heartbeat, we stayed like that, me holding the ice, him holding his breath, both of us trapped in a moment that felt dangerously intimate for two people still standing several feet apart. Then his hand moved. A small step forward. Barely a shift in the boards. But it felt like everything. Should I go? He asked, voice low, uncertain, but filled with something deeper than simple surprise. I didn't answer. Not yet. Because in that moment, with the cold melting on my skin and the heat rising in his eyes, I wasn't sure I wanted him to. And as the ice slipped from my fingers and hit the floor with a soft crack, the intensity between us reached a point where walking away might no longer be an option. And that's when everything truly began. I felt his question hanging in the air, should I go? But the truth was far heavier than that moment alone. What happened between us didn't start tonight, it started long before either of us admitted something was shifting. We used to be close in an uncomplicated way. Light banter in the mornings, shared laughter over late dinners, small gestures that seemed harmless at the time. But the closeness slowly changed. At first, it was subtle, too subtle to confront, too obvious to ignore. It began with the way he'd glance at me during conversations, holding eye contact a beat too long. The way he softened whenever I seemed exhausted from the day. Or the way he hovered near me when we were in the same room, not touching, not speaking, just being there, almost protectively. And I wasn't blameless. Some part of me noticed. Some part of me responded. It wasn't intentional. But it was real. There were stolen glances in the kitchen, the brush of hands when passing something, the quiet moments where neither of us spoke because silence felt safer than what we were actually thinking. We pretended it wasn't happening, used excuses like fatigue, coincidence, or imagination. But our hearts knew better. Tonight just tore the curtain down. He stepped further into the room now, carefully, like approaching something fragile. I could tell he didn't want to break whatever invisible line we'd been towing for weeks. But the line had already blurred. He looked away briefly, rubbing the back of his neck as if grounding himself. You've been distant lately, he murmured, keeping his gaze on the floor instead of the mirror. I thought maybe I did something. That hit deeper than I expected. I had been distant, on purpose. Because wanting something you shouldn't want makes you push the person away, even if part of you aches for them to pull closer. It was easier to pretend indifference than face the truth spreading slowly beneath my ribs. "You didn't do anything wrong," I whispered, though the words trembled with unspoken layers. The reflection showed him lifting his eyes back to mine, searching for what I wasn't saying. And there it was again, the tension, quiet but undeniable, coiling in the space between us. He stepped closer. Not enough to touch, just enough for me to feel the heat of him. "You always say that," he said softly. "But it feels like you're carrying something I'm not allowed to ask about." The honesty in his voice made something inside me shift, unravel just a little. My fingers tightened on the edge of the dresser. My heartbeat stumbled again. There were things I wanted to tell him. Things I wanted to admit. Feelings I had buried under obligation, fear, and the belief that some connections are too dangerous to name. But the truth hovered at the edge of my lips, trembling like a secret begging to escape. Before I could speak, he gently reached forward, only to pick up the fallen ice cube from the floor. His fingertips brushed mine for the briefest second. A tiny touch. Barely there. But enough to spark something warm and aching through both of us. He inhaled sharply. I didn't move. And just like that, the suspended moment deepened, emotion, tension, longing all tightening in the air. Neither of us knew where this was heading. The moment he picked up that melting piece of ice, something in his expression shifted, gentle concern fading into something sharper, deeper, something he couldn't hide anymore. He stared at the cube in his hand, then at me, as if the cold between his fingers was nothing compared to the heat tightening the space around us. "You never looked at me like that before," he said quietly, almost accusing, but his voice wavered with longing rather than anger. My breath caught. "Like what?" He lifted his eyes to mine through the mirror, and the tension surged. "Like you might actually want me to stay." Those words hit harder than they should have. Because he wasn't wrong. For weeks, the attraction had simmered beneath our interactions, buried smiles, lingering glances, tiny moments too intimate for the roles we were supposed to play. But wanting him felt off-limits. Dangerous. Forbidden in a way that made the desire even stronger. And he knew it. He had always known. "Why does it matter?" I whispered, though my voice trembled with every emotion I had tried to bury. His jaw flexed, a flash of frustration crossing his face. "Because you pull away every time someone else gets close to you," he said. "And you know what that does to me." Jealousy. The word didn't need to be spoken, it vibrated in the air between us. I turned fully toward him, the robe shifting slightly but still covering me. His eyes followed the movement, slow, helpless, drawn, and the raw honesty in them was enough to make my pulse trip. "You're jealous?" I asked softly. He didn't deny it. He didn't breathe. He stepped closer, just one step, but it was enough to bring him within arm's reach. Enough for me to feel the warmth of his body, the tension radiating off him like a storm building pressure. "You think I don't see the way they look at you," he murmured. "You think I don't notice when you blush, when you smile, when someone else gets too close?" His voice lowered, rough with everything he hadn't said. "You act like you don't want attention, but you always look at me when it happens." My heartbeat thundered. Because he was right. Because I didn't have an excuse anymore. And tonight, he glanced at the ice, then at my skin. "You didn't push me away." I swallowed hard. Maybe I didn't want to. His breath hitched, sharp, sudden, electrifying. We stood there, inches apart, everything forbidden pressing up against everything undeniable. The kind of tension that didn't ask permission, the kind that slowly, inevitably pulled two people into each other's gravity. And in that suspended moment, one more step from either of us, the room felt smaller with every breath we took. Neither of us moved, but the space between us tightened, pulling, heating, drawing us into something neither of us could pretend away anymore. He was close enough now that I could feel the warmth of his body brushing against the edges of my skin without a single touch. Every inhale he took matched mine, sinking in a rhythm that felt too intimate for two people still technically apart. "You shouldn't look at me like that," I whispered, though I didn't look away. "Then stop giving me reasons to," he murmured back, voice low and breathy, caught between restraint and desire. A faint tremor ran through me. Because even if I tried, I couldn't deny what had been building for weeks. The missed chances. The too long glances. The way we always seemed to find ourselves alone, even when we weren't trying to. Tonight wasn't an accident. Something inside me knew that. He glanced toward the door. It was still half open, the world just a few feet away, but the quiet between us felt sealed off from everything outside it. Hidden. Protected. Dangerous. "I shouldn't be here," he said, though his feet refused to step back. "Then why are you?" The question slipped out softer than I intended. His eyes locked onto mine again, intense, searching, vulnerable. "Because I couldn't walk away." "Not after seeing you he swallowed, the words catching. "Like that." My heartbeat fluttered, traitorous. "And now that you're here?" He exhaled sharply, like holding himself together took actual effort. "Now I don't know how to stop." The confession made my breath hitch. A sudden clap of thunder rumbled outside, making the lights flicker. For a second, the only illumination was the warm glow from the mirror lights, soft, intimate, golden, casting our reflections in a way that made us look even closer than we were. He moved. Just a step. But it brought him inches from me, close enough for his hand to almost brush my waist, close enough that the next shift, even the smallest one, would erase the last sliver of space left between us. "Tell me to go," he whispered, voice trembling. "Just say it, and I will." But I couldn't. The words wouldn't form. His breath mingled with mine as he leaned in, hesitant, controlled, fighting himself even as every part of him reached for me. And just when the moment tightened to its breaking point, when I thought he might finally close the distance, a sudden noise echoed from the hallway. A voice. Calling my name. We froze. Everything stopped. The voice from the hallway sliced through the moment like a blade, stopping both of us in place. His breath caught. My pulse jumped. The fragile closeness we had been pulled into suddenly felt exposed, like the world outside the door had somehow sensed what was happening behind it. I stepped back first. Only an inch, but it felt like miles. He closed his eyes, jaw tense, struggling to compose himself before anyone stepped inside. But no one entered. The voice faded. Silence slowly settled again, heavy, uncertain, charged. He opened his eyes and looked at me, and for the first time tonight his expression held something other than desire or restraint. It held fear. "I need to tell you something," he whispered. His voice was rough, shaking slightly. "Something I should have told you a long time ago." My stomach tightened. "What is it?" He hesitated, running a hand through his hair, pacing as if trying to gather courage he'd been avoiding for months. Finally, he stopped, turning toward me with an expression that made my heart lurch. "I wasn't supposed to be here tonight," he said. "I only came back because I saw something earlier, something I didn't know how to handle." My breath hitched. "What did you see?" He looked away, exhaling slowly. "You. In the cafe. With him. Him." I felt the blood drain from my face. "We were just talking," I said quickly, but even I could hear the falter in my voice. He shook his head, pain flickering across his features. "You weren't just talking. You looked nervous. Like you were hiding something. Like you didn't want me to see." He stepped closer, not with desire this time, but with the raw hurt of someone who'd been holding his feelings in too long. I thought, his voice broke for a moment. I thought maybe you'd already chosen someone else. The twist hit me like a cold wave. He wasn't jealous because of tonight. He was jealous because he thought he was already losing me. And in that revelation, something in me snapped open. I wasn't hiding him, I said softly. I was hiding the truth about us. He froze. I didn't want him to notice the way I look at you, I admitted. Or how much it affects me when you're near. I didn't want anyone to see what I can barely admit to myself. Something shifted in his expression, shock, relief, longing all mixing together. So, you feel it too? I swallowed hard. Yes. I've felt it for a long time. He stepped forward instinctively, then stopped, still fighting the urge to close the distance too quickly. What happens now? He asked quietly. Before I could answer, the hallway voice called my name again, louder this time, closer. We both turned toward the door. A shadow lingered on the other side. Someone had been listening. Someone who wasn't supposed to hear any of this. The truth we had finally spoken aloud was no longer just between us. And now, everything was about to change. The shadow outside the door didn't move. For a moment, the world felt suspended, every breath tight, every second stretched thin. I exchanged a quick, alarmed glance with him, and the fear in his eyes mirrored mine. Then the door pushed open. It wasn't forceful. Just slow, too slow, like the person behind it already knew what they were about to walk into. It was her. The one person who was never supposed to hear any of this. She didn't speak at first. She just stood there, eyes flicking from my flushed face to his tense posture, to the way the space between us felt undeniably charged. Her expression wasn't angry, not yet. It was worse, hurt, confused, betrayed. What is going on here? She asked quietly. The silence that followed sliced through the room far sharper than her voice. I swallowed hard, feeling my pulse crash in my chest. He took a step toward her, but she lifted a hand, not in anger, but in a quiet plea for honesty. No excuses, she said. Just tell me the truth. His shoulders dropped. All the restraint he'd held onto all night seemed to crumble. I didn't mean for you to hear any of that, he said, voice cracking. But it's true. All of it. Her breath shook. So you have feelings for her? The words splintered in the air. He didn't deny it. He didn't soften it. He didn't run. Yes, he said. I've tried to ignore it. I've tried to bury it. But tonight, seeing her like that, seeing how close I came to walking away, I couldn't lie anymore. The confession hung heavy, almost unbearable. She turned to me next. And you, she asked. Were you going to tell me? My chest tightened painfully. I never meant to hurt you. I didn't even want to admit it to myself. But I can't pretend anymore. Everything between us, it wasn't planned. It just happened. Her eyes watered, but she blinked it away, refusing to break. So what now? She asked, voice trembling. He stepped forward, expression raw. Whatever happens next, you deserve the truth. You deserved it a long time ago. Silence settled over us, fragile and heavy with consequences. But then, unexpectedly, she let out a shaky breath, not angry, not forgiving, but resigned. I need time, she whispered. And space. Because this changes everything. She looked at both of us one last time, hurt but strong, before turning and walking out of the room. The quiet sound of her footsteps echoed down the hallway, each one making the reality of the moment settle more deeply into my bones. When she disappeared around the corner, the silence that remained felt like the aftermath of a storm, devastated, shifted, but still standing. He exhaled shakily, sinking onto the edge of the bed, head in his hands. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "For everything. For the timing. For the mess. For the truth." I sat beside him, close enough to offer comfort, far enough to respect the chaos we had just created. "We didn't choose the feelings," I said quietly. "But we have to choose what happens next." He lifted his eyes to mine, tired, vulnerable, but filled with something resolute. "We will," he said. "But not with lies. Not anymore." The room felt painfully honest now, stripped of every excuse. The consequences had landed. The fallout had begun. Yet even through the wreckage, something between us still held on. A thread unbroken. A promise unspoken. The house felt impossibly still after she left, as if every wall was holding its breath along with us. The storm outside had softened to a quiet drizzle, tapping gently against the windows, calmer, like the world was finally settling after the emotional explosion that had shaken us both. He sat hunched on the edge of the bed, hands clasped tightly together, staring at the floor. The weight of everything we had confessed hovered heavy in the air, but something else was there now too, something gentler, quieter, undeniably hopeful. I moved closer, hesitating only for a moment before sitting beside him. "You don't have to say anything," I whispered, keeping my voice soft. "We'll figure it out one step at a time." He looked up, eyes rimmed with exhaustion but filled with a warmth I hadn't seen in months. "Do you think we still have a chance?" he asked, voice fragile. "After everything that just happened?" "Only if we're honest. With her, and with ourselves." I reached out slowly, giving him enough time to pull away if he needed to. He didn't. Feelings don't disappear just because the world gets complicated. He exhaled, a shaky breath that carried days, maybe months, of buried emotion. "I didn't expect tonight to happen," he said. "But I'm glad it did. At least now, you know." "I always knew," I admitted softly. "I just didn't know if I was allowed to feel it too." His eyes softened in a way that made my heart tighten. "You are," he said. "You always were." We fell into a quiet moment, no tension now, no fear, just a gentle warmth settling into the room like a long-awaited sunrise. The mirror beside us reflected the simplicity of the moment, two people finally choosing truth over hesitation. He reached for my hand, slow, deliberate, as if asking permission with every inch, and when our fingers touched, everything shifted. Not explosive, not reckless, just right. Something that had been waiting for a long time. "You know this won't be easy," I murmured. "I don't need easy," he replied. "I just need you." The sincerity in his voice washed over me, soothing every ache left from the conflict earlier. He gently brushed a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingertips lingering with a tenderness that spoke louder than any confession. The kind of touch that said he wasn't reaching for something forbidden anymore, he was reaching for something real. "We'll go slow," I said. "We'll heal what needs to be healed. But we'll do it together." A small smile tugged at his lips, the first genuine one of the night. "Together sounds perfect." I leaned my head against his shoulder, and he wrapped an arm around me, pulling me into a quiet embrace that felt like both an apology and a promise. Outside, the rain eased into silence, and the warm amber glow of the lamp softened the room around us. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel frightening. It felt open. Possible. Ours. One.